Hi everybody, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel. Happy New Year. Let's get started with the bang. Today I am going to be talking about my December wrap up, which is all Christmas books. I read all Christmas books in December. Honestly, I got a little Christmas out. By the end of it, I was ready for it to be over, but I did have some that I really enjoyed. It was a fun experience. It's something that I have never tried to do before, and I am very proud of myself for sticking with it. In general, it was just a really fun experience that I really enjoyed. So I did not entirely stick to my TBR. I mean, I kind of did. But two of the books that I read this month were not on my TBR. They were just convenient because I found them in audiobook form. And so it's like while I was like traveling and dealing with the storm, it was more convenient to listen to those on the audiobook in the car. And if I hadn't done that and had just stuck to the physical TBR of what was on my Kindle that my video was about, I wouldn't have completed them. So I would have rather been reading something than not reading anything at all. So it's like some of the books did change, but it was still all Christmas books, which was the point to begin with. So let's go ahead and get started. And I was so super hyped for this one. I was so excited to get into it. I had read Fern Michaels in the past and enjoyed her, but it had been many years. So I was like really excited to get into another one of her works, and I was so disappointed in this one. In this one, we follow a group of 4 friends who, after meeting back up at their high school reunion, make a pact to go on a Christmas cruise together if neither of them have dates by Thanksgiving. It was just, the writing was so juvenile, and I don't remember her writing being like that. I don't know if it changed or if maybe like my tastes have just changed or what, but it's like, it didn't feel like there was a whole lot put into the writing of this book. And it wasn't very Christmassy, like despite taking place at Christmas time. I mean, it's like there's a few instances where the girls are like hanging up mistletoe as a prank. That is really it. There's not really any Christmas music, not that I can remember. There's no exchanging of gifts. It happens to take place the week of Christmas on a cruise ship, which might I add, that's another thing that bothered me. It was more than 40% into the book before the cruise even started. So I just felt like this was a big misleading on what it was going to be about. It wasn't Christmassy. It wasn't very cruise-like. And I felt more like I was reading about 16-year-olds than women in their 30s. So I just didn't find it very relatable. I was extremely disappointed in it. It was, I gave it 2 stars, I believe. And it was a bit of a letdown. I was very nervous going into the rest of the month after reading this one. The next book that I read this month was Eating Her Christmas Cookies by Alina Jacobs, and this one restored my faith in like my Christmas journey, because this one I really liked. I had never heard of Alina Jacobs before on any platform, not on BookTube, not on Bookstagram, like nowhere. I'd never heard of this author. But I was searching for Christmas books on Kindle Unlimited, and this one popped up, and I liked the way that it sounded, so I decided that I was going to read it. And in Eating Her Christmas Cookies, we go back and forth between 2 characters, Chloe and Jack. I think those are their names. I might have them mixed up with another book, but I'm pretty sure it's Chloe and Jack. And this takes place in New York, and Jack has this building that he's trying to get tenancy for, and he's having a hard time. And even though he hates Christmas, he agreed to let this internet baking show film in the film in his tower so that it would generate publicity and hopefully get him tenants. But he hates Christmas, and this is a Christmas baking competition. And Chloe is one of the contestants, and she is very, very good. She also has a very big following on Instagram, and it's like she is totally into the decorating. She loves she loves Christmas. She's very, very good at the baking, and they form first an unlikely friendship, and it develops into more. I will say this book was very, very funny. It had so many jokes. It had me laughing the whole time. It was also like once their relationship gets like going into full swing, it's pretty steamy. So for like my steamy lovers out there, this might be a good one for you. But I just enjoyed the entire journey with this book. I cared about the characters so much. The ending did start getting a little far-fetched. It started getting a little chaotic. I rolled my eyes a couple times. So I was just like, oh, this is a bit much. So I knocked it down from a 5 to a 4 because of that. But overall, I just enjoyed this entire journey. It was so good. And I'm so glad that I found this book. There are more in the series. Apparently it's a series, which I didn't know initially. And I do plan on reading more because I'd like to know more about what happens with them. The next book that I read this month was Merry Xmas by Countney Walsh. And this was another one that I was anticipating because I thought that it was going to be really funny. And this one lived up to my expectations, even though it was not quite what I thought it was. The synopsis that I had read had stated that it was about a woman that goes home for Christmas and finds her ex-boyfriend at her parents' house. And I was just thinking as, interfering parents trying to force something. And I was kind of right, but kind of not at the same time. So this wasn't a lie in the synopsis. This is totally what happened. She shows up after, I think it's 7 years, and her ex-boyfriend opens the door. But where I was wrong was in the fact that the family didn't know that she was coming home. So it wasn't pre-planned. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't like them trying to force them together. She happened to show up to surprise them, and he was there. And mom refuses to kick him out because the family has history with him. He's not just her ex. He happens to be the son of the mother's best friend who has died in a car accident, and they've kind of like adopted him as their own son. So she's like, I'm never going to put him out in his time of need. So it's like, it was understandable why he was there, but the hijinks were still very much what was expected. Because like she is very unhappy that he's there. She wants him to leave, and he's just like all casual, like, no, your mom says I'm welcome, so I'm staying. And it's just like this back and forth, enemies to lovers types of things until she starts to recognize what the things that she liked about him in the first place. It's very cute. It's very sweet. And it's hysterical. There's some very funny parts in it. I will say that it's not very steamy. It is a romance, but it's not very steamy. So if steamy is what you gravitate towards, you might not like this one, but it's like it has a very strong story and it has very strong character development. And I personally did not mind the fact that it was not the steamiest, but that is all down to personal preference. So just keep that in mind going in. The next book that I read this month was The Christmas Party by Mikayla Davids. And this one, I didn't know what to expect. It's a thriller, and it takes place at Christmas. From the synopsis that I read, it sounded like a family reunion after there was like some family tension and people didn't get along. And it was like giving me Daisy Darker vibes when I read it, but at Christmas. And when I was actually reading it, I would say not as much so. It was similar in the fact that this family is meeting up for the first time in 10 years, and that they had had a big falling out. And this one sister she's married well, has a lot of money now, and she is wanting to show that she has done well for herself, so she invites her entire family to her mansion, basically, which they have a mansion, and then they also have like a hotel that's adjacent to it, and like she's having the party at the hotel and invites her family out there for a Christmas party. And hijinks afoot, somebody dies, and we're trying to figure out who did it, why, and it's like we keep getting perspectives like shifted throughout the story to different members of the family and their take on what happened when the family fell apart as opposed to now. And it's a little slow starting off, I will say that, but once we get to like a certain point, it really, really took off for me, and I was in it. It does have kind of a soap opera-y feel, so if you're not into that, that's something to keep in mind. But it was very, very interesting to me, seeing how everybody looked at like the same sequence of events differently, how everybody viewed it in their own way. And none of the characters are particularly likable. I do think that is one of the faults of the story. It's like I didn't really care about any of the characters except for maybe the children who weren't in it that much. So if you're not big on unlikable characters, this might not be for you, but overall I really did enjoy this, and I'm interested to see if I can find any more Mikayla Davids, because this was my first time reading from her. The next book that I read this month was Visions of Sugar Plums by Janet Evanovich, and this is part of the Stephanie Plum series, but it is non-canon. It is specifically a holiday story that just takes place in that universe, and it doesn't really fit into like the main storyline at all. So if you are in a particular part of the series and you want to read the holiday story, it's not really going to affect your experience all that much. So you could really read it whenever you're reading the Stephanie Plum series. But it is very, very funny because it kind of incorporates more of a fantastical element that's not usually there in the regular series. And Stephanie comes home one day to find this magical being named Diesel in her apartment, and he can like appear and disappear, and he tells her that he has been sent to protect her, and he's also looking for somebody that is one of her FDAs, which if you haven't seen any of my other videos about the Stephanie Plum series, she is a bounty hunter, and one of the men that she is looking for is like a Santa Claus, the shopping mall Santa Claus, I believe. It's been a while since I read this one. It's like the beginning of the month. But he is also trying to find him, and like the stories are kind of interconnected. It's very funny. It's very cute. I like that you don't have to really take it seriously and worry about where in the series to read it, because it doesn't really matter. It's not canon. It's just a little fun for the holidays. There are a couple like that throughout the series. There's one that takes place during Halloween, and I think there's one that takes place during Valentine's Day, but I could be wrong. I think there is. But this was very, very, very cute, and it's short. It's very easy to get through. The next book that I read this month was a absolute classic, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I think everybody probably knows what this book is about, but in case you don't, A Christmas Carol follows Ebenezer Scrooge, who is a scoundrel who absolutely hates Christmas, and he is mean to everybody in town. He doesn't want to give his employees time off to spend time with their families for Christmas, and he begins being visited by a series of ghosts one night. The ghost of Christmas past, Christmas future, and Christmas present, that tells him what his life will be like if he keeps up this momentum and if he doesn't change his attitude about things. And it's very, very interesting. The imagery that's in it is very, very cool. It was a very unique story, especially for the time. And I loved the atmosphere and the imagery and like getting inside Scrooge's head and him like realizing his faults along the way. And it was just so wonderfully told. I like to read this around Christmas time, like at least every other year. But it's an absolute classic. It always will be. I don't really care for any of the movies. There have been way too many, and none of them has done the stories justice, in my opinion. But it was such a classic story, and it's very, very short, so it took me about maybe 3 hours to read total. But it is so good. Go ahead and pick this one up and read it if you haven't already. The next book that I read this month was The Christmas Letters by Jenny Hale. And this one wasn't quite what I expected it to be. Like, from reading the synopsis, I was almost entirely wrong about this entire story. The synopsis led me to believe that it was just a woman that was getting dumped on Christmas Day, going home to her childhood home to recover, and finding a bunch of letters from her grandmother that she didn't previously know existed. None of that is really 100% accurate. She was broken up with her boyfriend and she did go home, but it was before Christmas. It was probably, I want to say it was before Thanksgiving. It might have like been early November, late October. And she does go home to her childhood home, which happens to be a farm in like kind of like this isolated mountainy town. And I was so conflicted on this book a lot of the time. And I can't even really pinpoint what it was about it that was conflicting me. So in this book, and I don't know if maybe it's that type of a setting. I don't know if people are like this in these types of communities. I don't come from a community like this. But everybody and their dog was so vicious to this woman because she left. And I never really understood why that was a problem, why that was a big deal. It's like, so she moved away when she turned 18. People do that all the time. Lots of people leave their childhood homes and like move off somewhere to try to make something of themselves. I'm like, it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. But it's like everybody was treating this woman like she was the scum on the bottom of their shoe for like the majority of the book because she came home after 7 years or whatever. It's like people would make like nasty comments, like not to her face, but when she was within hearing distance, like just didn't care if she heard them. Her ex-best friend was kind of giving her the cold shoulder and everything. And I'm just like, I didn't understand this. I'm like, is this really what it's like in these mountain towns? They expect people to never leave? I didn't understand this. I kind of felt like it was poor writing because like I didn't see that this woman had done anything to deserve this. And it's like there are even a couple of times within the story that she has this mentality of, oh, I've done them so wrong, or I have done so much wrong in my life and I got to make up for it. And it's like, all you did was move. I really didn't understand this. And now, putting that aside and getting back into the flow of the actual storyline, she meets this city guy at a local coffee shop, and it turns out that he is in real estate, and somebody has been trying to buy all of the farms in the area so that they can develop them into commercial use. And her mother has received this eviction letter stating that their farm is actually owned by a conglomerate company, and they have to leave after the holidays. But they're confused by this because the farm has been in their family for generations. So it's kind of like a mystery of trying to figure out what actually happened. And they are doing this partially with grandmother's letters, but they knew these letters existed. apparently it was something she did every Christmas, but a close friend of hers gave them a pile of letters that they hadn't read before, and they're kind of using that to get clues into what is going on in their current situation. That itself I thought was pretty clever, that they're literally getting help from beyond the grave to help them figure out what is going on with their property now. I thought that was very clever. I thought it was interesting. I thought, like, the character voices were very distinct. Like, our main character's mother, like, I loved her to death. She was so sweet. She had a very, very clear voice in my head. Like, I could always felt like Mama was, like, right here. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I just had such a hard time getting past the whole, shunning her for moving away thing. It never made sense to me. Even, like, and towards the end of the people are better about it, but it still just kind of got under my skin. I'm like, what is she apologizing for? And what is with their attitude? Like, I never understood this at all. And the last book that I read this month was The Christmas Class Reunion by Robin Paul. This, I felt this one was very problematic, and it wasn't really written in a way that addressed it, in my opinion. So in the Christmas Class Reunion, we're following, like, this small class who, I think it was 30 years before, this is like the 30-year reunion, 30 years before they had graduated at Christmas time rather than in the summertime because of weather issues. Like, they kept having to miss school, so it's like they didn't get to graduate until Christmas. So they were called the Christmas class for that reason. And the Christmas class reunion is finally, the Christmas class of this little town is having a reunion, and there's a lot of people coming back for it. And it's like we follow two characters. The main one is Jennifer, and she has done very well for herself. She has married a man who is wealthy and affluent. His family comes from money, and they own a couple of businesses in the town. They have a really nice big house, and she's kind of hosting the reunion. So it's like she's offering people that don't live in the town anymore that if they need a place to stay, they can stay with her. And one of the people that is going to be staying with her is somebody that's coming all the way from Florida, and that is Kyle. And so it's like we're kind of going back and forth between Jennifer and Kyle, and there's like this instant attraction between them. And the thing that I didn't like about this is they were both married, and unhappily married. The attraction itself didn't so much bother me because that's normal, but it's like they do act on this, and they act on it a lot. Like, a lot. And the story kind of treats it like this is perfectly okay. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. It's not. I don't care if you live hundreds of miles away. I don't care if you're having issues in your marriages. At that point, leave. I never understand why people think this is okay to do. So, and especially Jennifer. She pisses me off the most because she is largely the one that is pursuing him. He doesn't really do anything at first. She doesn't have to try too hard, granted, but she is the one that kind of gets everything in motion. And she kind of justifies it because her husband doesn't pay attention to her, or like he's away on a trip, on a hunting trip or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, he could have stayed and like taken care of the reunion stuff with you. Like, I admit, I'm like, okay, so I can understand being upset about that, but upset to the point that you're going to pursue somebody else in his house. Because keep in mind, Kyle is staying with her because he's from out of state. So technically this is her husband's house. This is his family's house. It's been in their family for generations. And she's going to do this in his house. Not okay. It's not okay, in my opinion. There's a lot of problematic angles in there. It's like, while he's on this trip, Kyle finds out from a friend that his wife is cheating on him. So it's like, in his mind, what he's doing is okay because she's doing it too. And like, in my opinion, that's a gray area, is like, two wrongs don't make a right. It's like technically she was the one that stepped out on the marriage first, but that doesn't make what he's doing okay. And I don't understand. Let's say, because this is the 30-year reunion, right? So these people are in their 40s. Why is it so hard to just be adults and end the relationships if you're so miserable? I can't condone it. The writing itself was actually pretty nice, and there were some interesting characters in there, but this whole condoning the cheating angle was so cringy to me, and it lasted through so much of the book that I just couldn't get on board with it, because it's like, it's very clear that you are supposed to like these characters, you're supposed to rate for them, and I couldn't with what they were doing. And I do like that this did get addressed slightly towards the end of the book, because Jennifer finds out that one of her assumptions was completely wrong, and she does feel some guilt for what she has done. So it's like, at least there's that. At least she does feel guilty, and she should. But overall, throughout the majority of the book, it's just treated like this is perfectly normal. It's just fine. And the hypocrisy drives me nuts, because it's like, Kyle's like sitting there talking about how his wife's stepping out on him, but he's putting the moves on Jennifer. And I'm like, how dare you be mad about your wife when you're doing the exact same thing? It's just, I don't know. I think it's dirty. I couldn't get past it. I won't be reading this one again, because it was so cringy and so dirty to me. I couldn't do it. So there was another book that I started, but I didn't finish it. And it's not the fault of the book at all, because what I read of it, I liked. I just honestly got Christmased out. I just couldn't do any more Christmas content. Between Christmas books and Christmas movies, on Christmas Day, like, I literally watched like 4 Christmas movies with my boyfriend, like, back to back. So it's like a combination of everything. I was just Christmased out, and I was tired, and I ended up putting it down because I needed a break. I needed to breathe. But that book was The Lodge by Fiona Baker. So it's like, it was technically a DNF, but it's not through the fault of the book. It is just me being completely tired. So I plan on reading that one next Christmas. Probably it's going to be like top of the list, because I do want to read it. I just couldn't do any more Christmas this month. Oh. So that is all that I have for you guys today. If you liked this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, follow me on the social medias. Click that bell if you want to be notified of all of my upcoming videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.